You want to know how 9 centuries of peace ended? Let me tell you, it was not with a whimper. It was not with a diplomatic misunderstanding. It was not even with some grand military miscalculation. No, no, no. It ended because King Vorthak the Insufferable, ruler of the Galactic Empire's 17,000 star systems, shot General Mira Hawthorne in the chest during what was supposed to be a ceremonial dinner. I was there. I saw the whole thing. And believe me when I say that nobody, and I mean nobody, expected the humans to react the way they did. Let me back up a bit. My name is Quilnax, and I served as the diplomatic observer for the Krell Confederacy. Fancy title. Boring job. Mostly I stood around at official functions, took notes, and tried not to fall asleep while politicians droned on about trade agreements and mining rights. I had been doing this for 63 years, which for my species is about equivalent to a human spending a decade in middle management. Tedious does not even begin to describe it. But that night was different. The peace treaty between humanity and the Galactic Empire had held strong for 900 years. 900 years. Do you understand how long that is? Human civilizations had risen and fallen in less time. The treaty was so old that most species treated it like a law of physics. The humans stay on their side of the galaxy, we stay on ours. Everybody gets along. Nobody dies. Simple. Elegant, profitable. The anniversary celebration was being held on Korvax Prime, a neutral world that specialized in hosting exactly this sort of event. Expensive, pretentious, and utterly convinced of its own importance, the banquet hall could hold 5,000 guests comfortably, and every seat was filled with someone who thought they mattered. General Mira Hawthorne represented Earth's Unified Defense Command. She was not what I expected. Most human military officers I had encountered were either grizzled veterans who looked like they chewed nails for breakfast, or young hotshots who thought tactics were something you learned from video games. Hawthorne was neither. She was in her 50s, calm, measured, with silver-streaked hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was immaculate. Her posture was perfect. She smiled when appropriate and spoke when necessary, and otherwise she watched everything with the kind of quiet intensity that made you wonder what she was thinking. I liked her immediately, which was unusual. I generally did not like anyone. King Vorthak, on the other hand, was exactly what you would expect from someone whose title had been passed down through 40 generations of inbred aristocracy. Tall, even for a Vixillian, purple skin that had been surgically enhanced to shimmer under light, forearms, each dripping with jewelry that probably cost more than my annual salary, and an ego that could be seen from orbit. He arrived late, naturally, because making people wait was how he asserted dominance. The entire hall stood when he entered, which he acknowledged with a dismissive wave of one hand while the other 3 were busy adjusting his ceremonial robes. Please, he said, his translator rendering his voice with an artificial warmth that did not match the coldness in his eyes. Sit. Tonight we celebrate peace, unity, mutual prosperity. Everyone sat, everyone except General Hawthorne, who remained standing until Vorthak noticed. Oh, he said, turning those cold eyes on her. The human general. How wonderful that you could attend. Your Majesty, Hawthorne replied, her voice neutral. The honor is mine. Is it? Vorthak smiled, showing too many teeth. I sometimes wonder if humans truly understand the concept of honor. Your species is so, how shall I say, young. There it was. The first jab. Subtle enough to be deniable, sharp enough to draw blood. I saw Hawthorne's jaw tighten just slightly, but her expression did not change. We are young, she agreed. But we learn quickly. Vorthak laughed. A sound like breaking glass. Indeed you do. Sit, General. Let us eat. The meal was predictably excessive. 17 courses, each prepared by chefs who charged fees that could fund small planetary defense systems. I picked at my food and watched the room. The human delegation was small, just Hawthorne and 3 aides. They sat together at a table near the front, isolated from the Empire's representatives, who occupied the center of the hall like a tumor. Vorthak held court from his elevated platform, surrounded by sycophants and advisors who laughed at his jokes and agreed with his every observation. He drank heavily, which was not unusual. What was unusual was the way he kept glancing at Hawthorne, his expression shifting between amusement and something darker. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there, but I was too busy being bored. The trouble started during the 8th course, some kind of roasted creature that I could not identify and did not want to. Vorthak stood, swaying slightly, and raised his glass. A toast, he announced. The hall fell silent. To 900 years of peace. to the wisdom of our ancestors who understood that some species are meant to lead, while others, well, others are meant to follow. I felt the temperature in the room drop about 10 degrees. Hawthorne stood slowly, her napkin folded precisely and placed beside her plate. "Your Majesty," she said, her voice carrying across the silent hall. "With respect, the treaty was an agreement between equals, not between leaders and followers." The sycophants gasped. Actually gasped. Like this was some kind of dramatic performance. Vorthak's smile widened. "Equals?" he repeated. "General, your species had barely left your home system when we were building stargates. You were fighting with chemical rockets while we were manipulating gravity itself. In what universe are we equals?" Hawthorne's expression did not change, but I saw something shift in her eyes. Something cold and dangerous. "In the universe where we agreed to peace," she said quietly. "In the universe where we chose diplomacy over conflict. In the universe where we both recognized that the alternative would benefit neither of us." "Ah, yes," Vorthak said, descending from his platform with the unsteady grace of someone who had consumed too much alcohol. "The alternative. Tell me, General, what exactly would you do if this treaty were to, hypothetically speaking?" "I would do my job, Your Majesty, which is, to protect humanity. By any means necessary." Vorthak stopped a few meters from her table, swaying slightly. His four hands moved in agitation, the jewelry clinking softly. "Any means necessary," he repeated, tasting the words. How deliciously vague. How typically human. Always implying threats without ever having the courage to make them explicit. I saw Hawthorne's aides tense. One of them, a young man with lieutenant's bars, started to stand, but Hawthorne gestured him back down without breaking eye contact with Vorthak. "I have not made any threats, Your Majesty," she said. "I have simply stated a fact. If you choose to interpret that as a threat, perhaps the problem lies in your interpretation rather than my statement." The silence in the hall was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. Actually, someone did drop a fork and it sounded like an explosion. Vorthak's face went from purple to nearly black. His hands clenched into fists. "You dare," he hissed. "You dare speak to me this way? In front of my court? You, a representative of a species that we allowed to survive out of mercy." "Allowed?" Hawthorne's voice remained calm, but now there was an edge to it. A hint of something that made my survival instincts scream warnings. "Your Majesty, I think perhaps your history lessons have been, shall we say, incomplete. The treaty exists because 900 years ago humanity proved that we could not be conquered. Not by you. Not by anyone. That did it." Vorthak's hand moved so fast I almost missed it. One moment he was standing there, trembling with rage. The next, he had drawn a plasma pistol from within his robes and fired. The shot hit Hawthorne's center mass, and she went down hard. For about 3 seconds nobody moved. The entire hall seemed frozen in a tableau of shock and horror. Hawthorne lay on the floor, smoke rising from the cauterized hole in her chest. Her aides stared at their fallen general. Vorthak stared at the pistol in his hand, as if surprised to find it there. And then one of Hawthorne's aides, the young lieutenant, spoke. "Oh," he said softly. "Oh, you really should not have done that." His voice was mild, almost conversational, but something about it made my blood run cold. Vorthak seemed to recover some of his composure. He straightened, tucking the pistol back into his robes. "Remove the body," he ordered. "This celebration is over. The human delegation is expelled from." He did not get to finish. General Hawthorne sat up, just sat up, like someone who had been taking a nap and decided it was time to wake up. The hole in her chest sealed itself with a wet, organic sound. She reached up, touched the damaged fabric of her uniform and sighed. "This was my favorite dress uniform," she said, her tone more annoyed than angry. "Do you know how long the tailoring takes?" Vorthak stared at her, his four hands trembling. What are you?" Hawthorne stood, brushing imaginary dust from her uniform. "I am General Mira Hawthorne, commander of Earth's Unified Defense Command. And you, Your Majesty, just violated the most important clause of the 900-year peace treaty." She smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. Article 7, Section 3, Subsection B. Any act of violence against a human diplomatic representative shall be considered an act of war. The young lieutenant was speaking rapidly into a communication device. I caught fragments of his words. "Treaty violation confirmed. Authorization Code 7 Alpha 9. Execute Protocol Nightfall." Protocol Nightfall. I had never heard of it. I was about to find out what it meant. Hawthorne looked around the hall, her gaze settling on each face in turn. When her eyes met mine, I felt like I was being measured and found wanting. "You are all witnesses," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive space. For 900 years humanity has honored this treaty. We have respected your borders, we have maintained peace, we have done everything asked of us, and more. She turned back to Vorthe, and you repaid that with attempted murder. So let me be very clear about what happens next. She pulled a small device from her pocket, pressed a button, and the sky above Korvax Prime filled with ships. Not a few ships, not a fleet, an armada. Thousands upon thousands of human warships, materializing from faster-than-light travel, blotting out the stars. I had never seen anything like it. The sheer scale was incomprehensible. 900 years ago, Hawthorne continued, we proved we could not be conquered. What we did not tell you was what we had been doing during those 9 centuries of peace. She smiled again. We have been preparing, building, waiting, hoping we would never need to use what we created, but also understanding that hope is not a strategy. Vorthik collapsed into a chair, his face ashen. The treaty, he whispered, is void. Hawthorne finished. As of the moment you pulled that trigger. Article 7 was very specific. 1 act of violence. Just 1. That was the line you could not cross. She holstered her communication device. Congratulations, Your Majesty. You just started a war that will end your empire. The hall erupted into chaos as everyone tried to process what was happening. Delegates shouted. Guards rushed forward, then stopped, unsure what to do. And through it all, Hawthorne stood calmly. Wait, I made my way to her side, my diplomatic training overriding my survival instincts. General, I said quietly, is this really necessary? Can we not find another way? She looked at me with something like pity. Observer Quilnax, she said, somehow knowing my name despite us never having been introduced. For 900 years we have been the ones compromising, negotiating, bending. We accepted insults. We tolerated condescension. We swallowed our pride because peace was more important than ego. She gestured at Vorthak. But this is not an insult. This is attempted murder. If we let this stand, every species in the galaxy will know that human lives mean nothing, that our treaties can be violated without consequence. She shook her head. No, some lines cannot be uncrossed, but the cost, I protested. The lives that will be lost will be on his hands, Hawthorne interrupted, pointing at Vorthak. Not ours. We did not want this. We did not ask for this. But we will finish it. The young lieutenant approached, saluting crisply. Ma'am, Fleet Command confirms Protocol Nightfall is active. All units are in position. They are awaiting your orders. Hawthorne nodded. Blockade all Empire-controlled systems. Nothing in. Nothing out. Disable all military installations within. She paused, calculating. 6 hours. Civilian casualties are to be avoided at all costs. This is a military operation, not a genocide. Understood, ma'am. As the lieutenant moved away to relay her orders, I found myself staring at this human woman who had just declared war on the most powerful empire in the galaxy without raising her voice or losing her composure. You have been planning this for 900 years, I said slowly. All this time you have been ready. Of course, Hawthorne replied. Peace is wonderful. Peace is desirable. But peace built on the assumption that the other side will never betray you? That is not peace. That is just waiting to be stabbed in the back. She touched the repaired section of her uniform again. We hoped it would never come to this. But we were not stupid enough to bet our survival on hope alone. I thought about my own species, the Krell Confederacy. Our military was ceremonial at best, designed more for parades than actual combat. We had assumed, like so many others, that the treaty would hold forever. We had been fools. What happens now? I asked. Hawthorne looked up at the armada visible through the hall's transparent ceiling. Now, she said softly, the galaxy learns why humanity spent 900 years being polite. The first Empire battle station fell in under 20 minutes. 20 minutes. I watched it happen on the holographic displays that Hawthorne's aides had set up in what used to be the banquet hall, and was now, apparently, a human military command center. The station had been considered impregnable, 16 kilometers of reinforced hull equipped with enough firepower to level a planet. It had defended the Empire's core systems for 300 years. The human fleet bypassed the shields using some kind of phasing technology I had never seen before. Then they cut through the hull with precision that suggested they had known exactly where to strike. The station's reactors went critical. Evacuation pods scattered like seeds in the wind, and just like that, The Empire's pride and joy became an expanding cloud of debris. Vorthak watched from his knees, still surrounded by guards who had no idea whether to arrest him or protect him. His 4 hands covered his face. Impossible, he kept muttering. This is impossible. General Hawthorne stood with her arms crossed, watching the tactical displays with the calm attention of someone reviewing a training exercise rather than the opening moves of galactic warfare. Station 7 is clear, reported one of her aides, a woman named Lieutenant Commander Vasquez. All personnel evacuated. Moving to Target 8. Confirmed, Hawthorne replied. Maintain the pace. I want every military installation in the core systems neutralized before their fleets can coordinate a response. I could not stop myself from asking the question that burned in my mind. General, how is this possible? The Empire has been the dominant military power for over 1,000 years. Their technology, their resources, how can you possibly outmatch them? Hawthorne finished. She glanced at me with something that might have been amusement. Observer Quilnax, let me tell you something about humanity. We are very, very good at preparing for the worst possible outcome. It is practically our species-defining trait. She gestured at the displays. For 900 years, every human scientist, every engineer, every strategic thinker has been asking themselves the same question. What would we do if the treaty failed? How would we survive? She walked to one of the displays, zooming in on a schematic of what I recognized as a Vexillian dreadnought. We studied every Empire ship design that we could access. We analyzed every battle they fought. We built simulation after simulation, running millions of scenarios, and then we designed our military specifically to counter theirs. Her finger traced a line along the dreadnought's hull. See that their ships are built for intimidation. Massive. Heavily armored. Designed to win through overwhelming force. Very impressive. Also very slow, very inefficient, and very predictable. Another display showed a human warship. It was smaller, sleeker, angular, where the Empire ships were curved. Our ships are built for one purpose only. To win, not to impress, not to project power. To win. She smiled that dangerous smile again. Turns out when you spend 9 centuries preparing for a fight, you get pretty good at it. Lieutenant Vasquez spoke up again. General, we are receiving communications from 17 different species. They are asking what our intentions are. Several are offering to mediate. Tell them our intentions are simple, Hawthorne replied. The Empire violated the treaty. We are responding proportionally. Any species that interferes will be considered hostile. Any species that remains neutral will not be harmed. She paused, and make sure they understand that this is not a war of conquest. We do not want their territory. We do not want their resources. We want justice. Justice? Vorthak had recovered enough to speak, though his voice was hoarse. You call this justice? Destroying our military? Crippling our defenses? This is revenge. Hawthorne turned to face him, and the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Revenge would be doing to you what you tried to do to me. Shooting you without warning, without cause, without mercy. Her voice was ice. Justice is making sure you never threaten anyone again. There is a difference. Your Majesty, though I suspect you have never bothered to learn it. I noticed that Vorthak's guards had quietly stepped away from him. Even his own people were distancing themselves. The Empire Council will never accept this, Vorthak said, trying to muster some of his former arrogance. They will fight. They will surrender, Hawthorne interrupted. Or they will watch every military asset they possess turn into scrap metal. She nodded to Vasquez. Open a channel to the Empire Council. All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. Vasquez worked her controls. A moment later, the holographic display shifted to show a council chamber. 12 Vexillian nobles stared out from the projection, their expressions ranging from shock to fury. Members of the Empire Council, Hawthorne began, her voice formal now. I am General Mira Hawthorne of Earth's Unified Defense Command. 3 hours ago, King Vorthak violated the 900-year peace treaty by attempting to murder me during a diplomatic function. As per Article 7 of that treaty, this constitutes an act of war. Humanity is now responding. One of the council members, an elderly Vexillian with elaborate ceremonial scars, leaned forward. General Hawthorne, we had no knowledge of the king's actions. This was not sanctioned by the council. Surely we can't negotiate? Hawthorne's tone made it clear what she thought of that idea. Counselor, with respect, your time for negotiation ended when your king pulled the trigger. What you can do now is choose how this ends. Are you threatening us? Another counselor demanded. I am offering you a choice, Hawthorne corrected. Option 1, you surrender immediately. You hand over King Vorthok for trial under neutral jurisdiction. You accept a new treaty with terms that humanity will dictate. You reduce your military to defensive forces only, supervised by neutral observers. And you pay reparations to every species your empire has exploited over the past 1,000 years. The council chamber erupted in protests. Hawthorne waited patiently for the noise to die down. Option 2, she continued. You fight. Your military installations continue to be destroyed. Your fleets continue to be disabled. Your economy continues to collapse as we blockade every system you control. And at the end, when you have nothing left, you will accept terms far harsher than what I am offering now. You cannot blockade the entire empire. One counselor shouted. We control 17,000 star systems. Counselor, we have 40,000 warships currently deployed. By tomorrow, we will have 80,000. By next week, 200,000. Hawthorne's voice remained calm. We have been building our fleet for 900 years. We have shipyards and systems you did not even know existed. We have resources stockpiled across human space. We have planned for this scenario so thoroughly that your strategist will spend decades trying to figure out how we did it. She leaned closer to the display. So yes, we can absolutely blockade the entire empire. The question is whether you want to test that claim. I found myself studying the counselors' faces. I had spent decades reading Vixillian expressions, and what I saw there was not anger. It was fear. Deep existential fear. The elderly counselor with the scars spoke again, his voice quieter now. What assurances do we have that humanity will not simply conquer us? That this is not merely the first step in human expansion? It was a fair question, and I leaned forward to hear Hawthorne's answer. You have my word, she said simply. And I know that means nothing to you right now. But let me explain something about human history, counselor. We know what empires do. We have built them. We have fought them. We have torn them down. We understand the temptation of power, and we understand the cost. She gestured around the room. That is why we spent 900 years preparing for defense, not conquest. We do not want your systems. We do not want your subjects. We want to make sure that no species, human or otherwise, ever has to live under the threat of imperial ambition again. Pretty words. Another counselor sneered. But words are cheap. Then judge us by our actions, Hawthorne replied. In the past 3 hours we have disabled 16 military installations. Do you know how many civilian casualties there have been? 0. Not one. Because every station was given warning. Every evacuation was allowed to complete. We could have simply blown them apart. Instead, we surgically removed their ability to fight while preserving every life we could. She paused. That is who we are, counselor. We do not wage war against civilians. We wage war against those who threaten peace. I realized something in that moment. Hawthorne was not just defeating the empire militarily. She was defeating them morally. Every word, every action was calculated to show that humanity held the higher ground. It was brilliant and terrifying. Lieutenant Vasquez interrupted. General, we have incoming from Admiral Zhang. The Fourth Fleet has secured the outer territories. Minimal resistance. They are requesting permission to advance on the core worlds. Denied. Hawthorne said immediately. Tell Admiral Zhang to hold position and maintain the blockade. We are not invading. We are containing. She turned back to the council. You have 6 hours to make your decision. Surrender and accept the terms. Or fight and accept the consequences. There will not be a third option. She nodded to Vasquez, who cut the transmission. The silence that followed was profound. Vorthok remained on his knees. Defeated. His guards stood at attention, waiting for orders that would never come. The various delegates and observers who had been trapped in the hall since the fighting started whispered among themselves. I approached Hawthorne again. I seemed to be making a habit of it. General, may I ask you something personal? She looked at me, one eyebrow raised. You can ask. I may not answer. When the king shot you, you healed almost instantly. I have been around humans before. That is not normal. What are you? Hawthorne smiled, and for the first time it reached her eyes. Observant. Observer Quillnax. I like that. She tapped her chest, right where the plasma bolt had struck. Nanite enhanced regeneration. Standard issue for all human military personnel above the rank of major. Takes about 30 seconds to repair anything short of complete disintegration. She shrugged. Turns out, when you spend 900 years developing defensive technology, you come up with some interesting solutions. So you knew he could not kill you. I suspected. Plasma weapons are predictable. If he had used something more exotic, something designed to counter regeneration, I might have been in trouble. She glanced at Vorthak. But arrogant nobles tend to stick with traditional weapons. They like the symbolism. I thought about that. Thought about how Hawthorne had stood there, knowing she would survive, letting Vorthak damn himself with his own actions. You wanted him to shoot you, I said slowly. Want is a strong word, Hawthorne replied. But did I expect it? Yes. Did I prepare for it? Absolutely. The king has a history of violent outbursts when challenged. It was only a matter of time. She looked at me directly. Observer Quilnax, do you know why the treaty has lasted 900 years? Because both sides honored it? No. Because both sides feared breaking it. She gestured at the tactical displays. The Empire feared that humanity would retaliate. Humanity feared that war would cost too much. As long as that mutual fear existed, the treaty held. But fear only works as a deterrent if the threat is credible. If the Empire believed, truly believed, that they could attack us without consequence, the treaty would have been worthless. So you spent 900 years making sure the threat was credible. We spent 900 years making sure we could back up our words with action. Hawthorne corrected. There is a difference. Threats are empty posturing. Capability is reality. A new voice interrupted us. One of the council members had opened a private channel, bypassing the official communication protocols. The elderly Vixillian with the scars appeared on a small display. General Hawthorne, this is Councillor Trevax. I am speaking to you alone without the knowledge of the other council members. Hawthorne's expression did not change, but I saw her posture shift slightly. Alert, but not defensive. Councillor. I am listening. The council will not surrender, Trevax said bluntly. Too many of them are too proud, too invested in the idea of empire superiority. They will fight even though they know they cannot win. Then they will lose, Hawthorne said simply. Yes, they will. Trevax's face showed something I had never seen in a Vixillian noble before. Shame. But the Empire's subjects, the billions of civilians across those 17,000 systems, they do not deserve to suffer for the Council's pride. I agree, Hawthorne said. Which is why we are targeting military assets only. That will not be enough. Trevax leaned closer to his pickup. General, I have spent my entire life in service to the Empire. I believed in it. I thought we were bringing order to the galaxy, civilization to barbaric species. He paused. I was wrong. The Empire has become exactly what it once fought against. Arrogant. Cruel. Corrupt. King Vorthak is merely a symptom of a larger disease. What are you proposing, Councillor? I will convince the Council to surrender. But I need assurances from you. Real assurances, not diplomatic platitudes. Trevax's voice was steady. Promise me that you will not execute the king, that you will not humiliate the Empire beyond what is necessary, that you will help us rebuild into something better than what we were. Hawthorne was quiet for a long moment, considering. I cannot promise that the king will avoid punishment, she said finally. He attempted murder. He violated a treaty that kept the galaxy peaceful for 9 centuries. There must be consequences. I understand, but not execution? Not execution. Hawthorne agreed. Trial, imprisonment, but not death. We are not in the business of creating martyrs, and the Empire itself will be restructured. The Council will be dissolved. A new government will be established, one that represents all the species under Empire control, not just the Vixillian nobility. Hawthorne's voice softened slightly. Councillor, humanity does not want to destroy the Empire. We want to transform it into something that can coexist peacefully with the rest of the galaxy. If you help us do that, we will help you rebuild. Trevax nodded slowly. Give me 12 hours. I will convince the Council. You have 8, Hawthorne countered. After that, my superiors will start pressuring me to escalate. I would prefer to avoid that. 8 hours then. Trevax paused. General, may I ask you something? Of course. When you sat up after being shot, I saw something in your eyes. Not anger, not hatred. What was it? Hawthorne smiled sadly. Disappointment, Councillor. For 900 years we hoped that we were wrong, that the galaxy had evolved beyond violence, that peace could be maintained through mutual respect rather than mutual fear. She touched her chest again. When the king pulled that trigger, he proved that we were right to prepare, and that made me sad. The transmission ended. Vasquez looked at Hawthorne questioningly. Do we trust him, ma'am? No, Hawthorne said. But we can verify. Keep full surveillance on the council chamber. If he is setting a trap, I want to know immediately. I found myself admiring this human woman more and more. She was not just a warrior. She was a strategist, a diplomat, and a realist all rolled into one. Observer Quilnax, Hawthorne said, turning to me. I have a request. Yes, General. The Krell Confederacy has maintained neutrality throughout this entire situation. You have not taken sides. You have simply observed and recorded. Is that correct? It is. I confirm. Good. Then I need you to be a witness, an impartial observer who can testify to what happened here, to why this war started, how it was conducted, and how it ended. She looked at me seriously. History will judge this moment, Quilnax. I want to make sure the truth is part of that judgment. I understood what she was asking. She wanted me to be more than a witness. She wanted me to be a chronicler. I will do it, I said. I will make sure the truth is recorded. Thank you. The next 8 hours passed in a blur. I watched as human fleets continued their systematic dismantling of Empire military power. I watched as Councillor Trevax worked tirelessly to convince his fellow nobles that surrender was the only option. I watched as General Hawthorne coordinated the largest military operation in galactic history without ever raising her voice or losing her composure, and at the end of those 8 hours the Empire Council transmitted their surrender. It was over. 900 years of peace, ended by one arrogant king's moment of violence, and resolved by one prepared species' demonstration of overwhelming force tempered by restraint. As I watched Hawthorne accept the surrender, I realized something profound. Humanity had not just won a war. They had redefined what victory meant. They had shown the galaxy that power without morality was weakness, and that true strength came from knowing when to fight and when to show mercy. General Mira Hawthorne stood in the center of what had been a banquet hall and was now a command center, surrounded by the evidence of humanity's capability and their character. And I knew that the galaxy would never be the same again. For 900 years we had all lived under the assumption that the Empire was the dominant power. That assumption was wrong. Humanity had been the dominant power all along. They had simply chosen not to demonstrate it, until they had no choice. The new treaty was signed 3 weeks later. The Empire was restructured. King Vorthak was tried, convicted, and sentenced to life imprisonment on a remote human facility. The various species that had been subjugated under Empire rule were given representation in a new galactic council, and humanity. They quietly returned to their corner of the galaxy, maintaining their fleets, keeping their vigil, just in case they were needed again. I filed my report with the Krell Confederacy. I told them everything I had seen, everything I had learned. Their response was to immediately begin upgrading our own defenses, and to establish much closer diplomatic ties with humanity. We were not the only ones, because the galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Peace is not maintained by hoping for the best. It is maintained by preparing for the worst. And humanity, they had been preparing for 900 years.